The idea of this book is grounded in the idea of connectedness, similar to the well-known game 6 Degrees of Kevin Bacon. For myself personally, I went to training in New Mexico with Medal of Honor recipient Drew Dix. He works a lot with Gary Sinise's Fallen Veteran Foundation. Gary Sinise and Kevin Bacon were both in Apollo 13. With a Kevin Bacon score of 3 or less, I clearly practically know Kevin on a first-name basis. In 1976, evolutionary biologist Richard Dawkins coined the term which my mother calls memes. These memes, supposedly called memes also, are an idea, behavior, style, or usage that spreads from person to person within a culture. Frank argues in his book that Adam Smith's invisible hand in markets does not promote common good, especially in the short run, and that from a policy perspective, we must encourage socially beneficial memes and discourage socially harmful ones. Therefore, a deeper understanding of the power of behavioral contagion, or the tendency to mimic others' behavior, informs how we should use memes to reinforce certain behaviors. Climate change is clearly an existential threat. However, if individuals are predominantly self-interested, we collectively reinforce individual spending decisions like buying heavier cars, which leads to suboptimal Nash equilibriums or prisoners' dilemmas. With the SUV example, drivers feel the need to drive safer, heavier vehicles than relatively unsafe, lighter vehicles, and that leads to overall increased risk for everyone as they all collectively drive less safe, heavy vehicles than the lighter ones.
Under the Influence discusses the concept of behavioral contagion. This is not to be confused with the 2011 movie Contagion starring Matt Damon. Behavioral contagion is the tendency for people to repeat a behavior after others have done it. Climate change is impacted by behavioral contagion, but Robert Frank acknowledges that we only participate in negative behavioral contagion at this point. Our negative impacts on climate change as a society contribute to a classic case of the tragedy of the commons. We have a means to act appropriately, and yet we continue to act irresponsibly and harm the climate. We must contribute to behavioral contagion in a positive manner. For example, using solar panels to provide energy to our house could be a positive behavioral contagion. If your neighbor has solar panels, don't you want them too? Positive behavioral contagion is what Frank desires, but he finds it hard to achieve and promote.
In Robert Frank's book, he states that in order to promote better environments, taxation is often more effective and less intrusive than regulation. Frank introduces the idea of a Pagovian tax, an approach that is good at minimizing environmental externalities. In Chapter 11 of the book, we hear that when the problem is that a specific context encourages behavior with negative consequences, the best solution will often be to alter the individual incentives that gave rise to that context in the first place. By taking a tax approach, this creates incentives for us to achieve climate change mitigation targets. In summary, by creating incentives like taxes, this might alter human preferences, which lead to a behavioral contagion effect of decreasing emissions.